The cold autumn wind whipped across the plains as Vivian Ellis stood at the edge of the homestead. Her 36 years etched in the fine lines around her eyes that crinkled when she squinted at the horizon. Hope had abandoned her long ago, or so she believed, until that fateful day when destiny arrived in a dust cloud on the Montana Territory frontier of 1878. Vivian had come west 5 years earlier, fleeing the remnants of a life shattered by the war and subsequent loss of her husband to typhoid. She'd built a modest life for herself, teaching at the one-room schoolhouse in Silverwater Creek. The children loved her, but to the eligible men of the territory, she was considered a spinster too old to be chosen as a bride when younger women were plentiful. Miss Ellis called Lily Matthews, one of her youngest pupils. "Pa says you're to come for supper on Sunday. He says you shouldn't be alone so much." Vivian smiled kindly at the child. "Thank you, Lily. Tell your father I appreciate the invitation, but I have lessons to prepare." It was the same excuse she always gave. The truth was that she couldn't bear the pity in people's eyes or the awkward matchmaking attempts that inevitably followed such gatherings. At 36, she had accepted her fate as the town's spinster schoolteacher. The schoolhouse bell rang, signaling the end of recess. Vivian gathered the children, counting heads as they filed inside. 23 pupils today, a good turnout considering harvest season had begun. She was halfway through her arithmetic lesson when the door swung open. A man stood in the doorway, tall and weathered by sun and hardship. His hat was clutched in his hands, revealing hair the color of wheat touched by frost at the temples. Behind him stood 2 young girls, one about 12, the other perhaps 9. "Pardon the interruption, madam," he said, his voice deep and tentative. "Name's Wade Patterson, just arrived in town. Sheriff Holloway said you might have room for my daughters." Vivian straightened her spine and gestured to 2 empty desks. "Of course, Mr. Patterson. We always have room for eager minds." The girls glanced up at their father, who nodded encouragingly. They scurried to the vacant seats while Wade Patterson lingered a moment longer, his gaze meeting Vivian's. "Much obliged, madam. They've missed a fair bit of schooling these past months. Their mother passed last winter, and we've been on the move since." Something in his voice, a rawness that matched her own hidden pain, made Vivian's heart stutter. "I'm sorry for your loss, Mr. Patterson. I'll ensure they catch up." He nodded, replaced his hat, and departed, leaving the scent of leather and open prairie in his wake. The younger Patterson girl, Emma, was quick to learn and eager to please. The older one, Charlotte, was more reserved, watching Vivian with careful eyes that had seen too much for her young age. By week's end, Vivian had developed a fondness for both girls, especially when Emma began staying after class for extra help with her reading. "You read so pretty, Miss Ellis," Emma said one afternoon as Vivian helped her sound out a difficult word. "You remind me of my mama when you do that." The words caught Vivian off guard. "That's a lovely compliment, Emma. Your mother must have been a special woman." "She was," Emma replied, tracing the letters on the page. "Pa says no one could ever replace her, but sometimes I forget what her voice sounded like." Vivian's heart constricted. "Perhaps your father could tell you stories about her. That might help you remember." Emma's face brightened. "Would you ask him? He might tell you since you're a grown-up lady." Before Vivian could formulate a response, the schoolhouse door opened and Wade Patterson appeared looking apologetic. "Sorry I'm late, Emma. The meeting with Mr. Fordham about the ranch purchase ran longer than expected." "It's no trouble," Vivian assured him, gathering her things. "Emma has been working diligently on her reading." Wade's expression softened as he looked at his daughter. "That's so. Your mama would be proud." Emma beamed, then said with childish directness, "Miss Ellis says you should tell us stories about Mama so we don't forget her voice." Wade's eyes shot to Vivian's, a flash of pain crossing his features. "I only suggested that memories can be preserved through stories," Vivian clarified hastily. "I didn't mean to overstep." Wade studied her for a long moment. "No offense taken, Miss Ellis, it's good advice." He extended his hand to Emma. "Come along now, Charlotte's waiting with Mrs. Holloway." As they turned to leave, Wade paused. "Miss Ellis, I was wondering if you might join us for supper tomorrow as thanks for your patience with the girls." The invitation caught Vivian by surprise. "That's very kind, Mr. Patterson, but please, Miss Ellis," Emma interjected. "Charlotte and I would really like it." Looking at Emma's hopeful face and Wade's expectant one, Vivian found herself nodding. "I'd be delighted." The Patterson homestead was modest but well kept, situated on a gentle rise that offered views of the distant mountains. Wade had purchased it from a family returning east, complete with a small herd of cattle and several horses. Charlotte greeted Vivian at the door, her usual reserve momentarily replaced by politeness. "Pa's just seeing to the horses. He said to show you in." The interior was simple but comfortable, with a few feminine touches that Vivian suspected were recent additions, perhaps the girls' attempts to make it feel like home. Wade entered, bringing the smell of evening air with him. He'd clearly made an effort with his appearance, his hair slicked back and his shirt freshly pressed. "Miss Ellis, welcome to our home," he said, gesturing to the table where a surprisingly elaborate meal awaited. "The girls and I have been planning this feast all day." Supper was a lively affair, with Emma chattering about school and Charlotte occasionally interjecting with dry observations that revealed a sharp intellect behind her quiet demeanor. Wade spoke of his plans for the ranch, his voice animated in a way Vivian hadn't heard before. "It's ambitious," she remarked when he described his intention to expand the herd in the spring. "Too ambitious?" he asked, a hint of vulnerability in his question. Vivian considered him thoughtfully. "No, I don't think so. Ambition is what built the West." After the meal, as Wade walked her to her wagon, a comfortable silence settled between them. "The girls seem happy here," Vivian observed. Wade nodded. "They're adjusting. It's been hard, but they're strong like their mother. You must miss her terribly." "Every day," he admitted. "But lately, I've been thinking that Catherine wouldn't want us to stop living just because she did." The statement hung in the air, laden with unspoken implications. "No," Vivian agreed softly. "I don't suppose she would." As autumn deepened into winter, Vivian found herself becoming increasingly involved in the Patterson family's life. She helped Charlotte with an advanced reading project, taught Emma to knit, and even advised Wade on which cattle buyer in town offered the fairest prices. The town noticed. Whispers followed Vivian, some approving, others less so. "It's not proper," Mrs. Godfrey, the minister's wife, commented one Sunday after church. "A single woman spending so much time with a widower." "The poor man needs help with those girls," countered Mrs. Holloway. "And Vivian Ellis is hardly a young, impressionable thing. She's nearly 40. Vivian overheard the exchange and felt the familiar sting of being discussed as though she were invisible or worse, irrelevant due to her age. She was about to walk away when Wade appeared at her side. "Don't pay them any mind," he said quietly. "People talk when they've nothing better to do." Vivian managed a smile. "I'm well acquainted with being the subject of town gossip, Mr. Patterson." "Wade," he corrected. "After all this time, I think we can dispense with formalities, don't you?" The first heavy snow came in December, blanketing the territory in white. School was suspended for several days, but Vivian worried about the Patterson girls, knowing Wade had ridden to the next town for supplies before the storm hit. On the third day, she hitched her horse to the small sleigh she kept for winter travel and made her way to the Patterson homestead. The journey was arduous, the snow deep in places, but concern propelled her forward. She found Charlotte and Emma alone, the fire burning low and their food supplies dwindling. "Pa should have been back by now," Charlotte explained, her stoic facade cracking slightly. "But the pass might be blocked with snow." Vivian took charge immediately, building up the fire and taking inventory of their remaining provisions. She showed the girls how to make a hearty stew from the meager ingredients on hand, and told stories to distract them from their worry. That night, after the girls were asleep, Vivian sat by the window, watching the snow continue to fall. She was contemplating whether to try to reach town for help when she heard the distant sound of a horse struggling through the drifts. Wade Patterson emerged from the darkness like a specter, his horse exhausted and his clothing crusted with ice. Vivian rushed to help him inside, alarmed by the blue tinge to his lips and the vacant look in his eyes. "The girls," he mumbled as she helped him to a chair by the fire. "They're fine," she assured him, working quickly to remove his frozen outer garments. "Just worried about you." His skin was dangerously cold, and Vivian knew enough about winter survival to recognize the signs of severe exposure. Working methodically, she wrapped him in blankets and prepared hot broth, which she coaxed him to sip slowly. Throughout the night, she tended to him, applying warm compresses and monitoring his temperature. By morning, color had returned to his face, though exhaustion had claimed him. He slept deeply while Vivian explained to the relieved girls that their father would recover but needed rest. When Wade finally woke late that afternoon, he found Vivian dozing in the chair beside his bed, her hand resting near his. He studied her in the soft light, the gentle curve of her cheek, the strand of dark hair threaded with silver that had escaped her usually tidy bun, the lines that spoke of a life fully lived. "Vivian," he said softly. She stirred, her eyes opening to meet his. "You're awake. How do you feel?" "Like I've been trampled by a herd of buffalo," he admitted with a weak smile. "But alive, thanks to you." Vivian straightened, suddenly aware of their proximity. "You were lucky, another hour in that cold." "I know." He reached for her hand, his grip surprisingly strong. "You saved my life. And you were here for my girls when I couldn't be." Something unspoken passed between them, a current of understanding and connection that transcended words. The blizzard lasted another 2 days, forcing Vivian to remain at the Patterson homestead. Those days formed a peculiar bubble of time, removed from the constraints and judgments of the outside world. Wade regained his strength, and together with the girls, they established a domestic routine that felt surprisingly natural. On the evening before the roads were clear enough for Vivian to return to town, Wade found her alone on the porch, wrapped in a heavy shawl as she gazed at the star-filled sky. "The girls are asleep," he said, joining her. "Charlotte asked if you could stay forever." Vivian smiled, though her heart ached at the impossibility. "They're wonderful girls. You've done well with them, despite everything." "I haven't done it alone, not lately." Wade turned to face her, his expression earnest. "Vivian, I've been thinking a lot these past days. About the future, about what Catherine would want for me and the girls." Vivian's pulse quickened, but years of protecting herself from disappointment made her cautious. "And what conclusions have you reached?" "That life is too short and too unpredictable to ignore what's right in front of you." He took a deep breath. "The girls need a mother, someone who understands them, who can guide them as they grow into women." The words struck Vivian like a physical blow. Of course that's what this was about, a practical arrangement for the sake of his daughters. "I'm sure you'll find someone suitable," she said stiffly, turning away to hide the hurt in her eyes. Wade's hand on her arm stopped her. "You misunderstand me, Vivian. I'm not looking for just anyone. I'm looking at you." Vivian's breath caught. "Wade, I'm 36 years old." Hardly the ideal choice for a new bride or mother. "Ideal according to whom?" he challenged. "You're exactly what my daughters need, what I need." Hope fluttered in Vivian's chest, but doubt quickly smothered it. "The town will talk. They'll say you could do better, someone younger, someone who could give you more children." Wade's expression hardened. "I don't give a damn what anyone else thinks, and as for more children, that would be a blessing, but Charlotte and Emma are enough family for me, unless you want more," he finished softly. "With me." The winter gave way to spring, bringing new life to the land and to Vivian's heart. The wedding was a simple affair, held in the town church with only a few close friends in attendance. Mrs. Godfrey's lips pursed in disapproval, but Mrs. Holloway beamed and declared it was about time. Charlotte and Emma stood as witnesses, their faces reflecting a mixture of emotions: joy, uncertainty, hope. When the minister pronounced Wade and Vivian husband and wife, It was Emma who clapped the loudest and Charlotte who surprised everyone by embracing Vivian tightly. Life at the Patterson ranch settled into a rhythm that suited them all. Vivian continued teaching, riding to and from town each day. Wade's cattle business prospered, thanks in part to Vivian's unexpected head for figures and negotiations. The girls blossomed under the combined guidance of their father and their new mother. It wasn't always easy. Charlotte sometimes withdrew into silence when memories of her mother surfaced, and Emma occasionally tested boundaries, as children do. Wade and Vivian had their disagreements about the ranch, about the girls' upbringing, about the allocation of their limited resources. But they faced each challenge together, their partnership strengthening with each obstacle overcome. One evening in early summer, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Emma settled beside Vivian, her head resting against her shoulder. "Miss Ellis," she began, then caught herself. "I mean, Vivian, you can call me whatever feels right, Emma," Vivian assured her, having had this conversation several times before. Emma was quiet for a moment, twisting a strand of her hair around her finger. "The thing is, when I'm at school I call you Miss Ellis because you're the teacher. But here at home, it feels strange. And calling you Vivian feels strange too because you're Pa's wife now." Wade, who had been whittling a small wooden horse for Emma, looked up with interest. "What would you like to call me?" Vivian asked gently. Emma glanced at her father, then back at Vivian. "I was thinking maybe, Mother, not Mama because that was her, but Mother could be you." Tears sprang to Vivian's eyes. "I would be honored, Emma, truly honored." Later that night, as Vivian prepared for bed, she found Wade watching her with an intensity that made her cheeks warm despite their months of marriage. "What Emma said today," he began. "About calling you Mother. Are you truly all right with that?" Vivian nodded, unpinning her hair and letting it fall around her shoulders. "More than all right. It means she's accepted me as part of her life in a permanent way." Wade crossed the room to stand behind her, his hands gently gathering her hair. "You know, when Catherine died, I thought my heart had died with her. I couldn't imagine ever feeling anything again except for the girls." Vivian turned to face him, reaching up to touch his cheek. "I understand. After James died, I closed that part of myself off. It seemed safer that way. And now," Wade's voice was husky with emotion, "now I'm thankful every day that life gave me a second chance at love." She smiled up at him. "Even if it came later than most." Wade pulled her close. "Not later, right on time." The following Sunday, the Patterson family attended church together, as had become their custom. Charlotte had begun sitting with the other older girls, but Emma still preferred to remain with Wade and Vivian. As they settled into their pew, Vivian noticed Mrs. Godfrey watching them, her expression unreadable. After the service, as the congregation spilled into the churchyard, Mrs. Godfrey approached, her husband the minister trailing behind her. "Mrs. Patterson," she said, addressing Vivian with the formality she had adopted since the wedding. "The Ladies' Aid Society is organizing a summer picnic for the Independence Day celebration. We require assistance with the planning committee." It was the first time Mrs. Godfrey had included Vivian in any town activity since her marriage to Wade. The invitation represented, if not approval, at least acceptance. "I would be happy to help," Vivian replied, careful to keep any hint of triumph from her voice. Emma tugged at Vivian's sleeve. "Can I help too, Mother?" Mrs. Godfrey's eyebrows rose at the form of address, but she recovered quickly. "Young ladies are always welcome to learn the arts of organization and hospitality." As Mrs. Godfrey moved on to speak with another family, Wade slipped his arm around Vivian's waist. "Mother," he murmured, "it suits you." The summer passed in a blur of activity. The cattle herd grew, requiring additional hands that Wade hired from among the young men passing through town. Vivian's school term ended, giving her more time at the ranch, where she established a vegetable garden that promised to reduce their dependence on the general store's often limited supplies. Charlotte, approaching her 13th birthday, began to show interest in the ranch operations, often following Wade as he worked with the cattle. Emma, by contrast, gravitated toward Vivian's domestic activities, proving to have a natural talent for cooking that surpassed her stepmother's. It was Emma who first noticed the changes in Vivian: the occasional morning sickness, the unusual fatigue, the slight thickening of her waist. "Mother," she said one afternoon as they kneaded bread dough side by side, "are you going to have a baby?" Vivian's hands stilled. She had suspected for several weeks but had hesitated to voice her hopes, fearing disappointment. At 37, the chances of conceiving had seemed slim, despite the passionate nature of her marriage to Wade. "What makes you ask that, Emma?" the girl shrugged. "Mrs. Taylor at the general store had the same look before her baby came. And you've been sick in the mornings, like Mama was when she was carrying my little brother." Vivian hadn't known about Catherine's third pregnancy, which had evidently ended in loss. "You had a brother." Emma nodded solemnly. "For a little while. He came too early and couldn't stay, that's what Pa said." Vivian gently brushed flour from Emma's cheek. "I don't know for certain if I'm expecting, but it's possible. How would you feel about that?" Emma considered the question seriously. "I'd like it." "A baby would be nice. Charlotte might be worried, though." "Worried? Why?" "Because she remembers Mama more than I do. She might think you're trying to replace her." The insight from a 9-year-old was surprisingly perceptive. "If I am having a baby, it wouldn't change how much I care for you and Charlotte. You know that, don't you?" Emma nodded confidently. "Of course. There's always enough love to go around. That's what Pa says." That evening, after the girls had gone to bed, Vivian found Wade on the porch, reviewing the ledger where he tracked the ranch accounts. She sat beside him, gathering her courage. "Wade, I need to tell you something." He looked up, instantly alert to the tremor in her voice. "What is it?" "Is something wrong?" "No, not wrong, just unexpected." She took his hand and placed it against her abdomen. "I believe I'm with child." Wade's expression transformed from concern to wonder in an instant. "A baby, are you certain?" "As certain as I can be without consulting Dr. Miller." "It's early yet, perhaps 3 months along." Wade pulled her into his arms, his laughter mingling with something that sounded suspiciously like tears. "Vivian, I don't have words." "You're happy then?" she asked, needing to hear it explicitly. "Happy doesn't begin to describe it." He drew back to look at her, his eyes shining. "Are you? I know this wasn't part of our plan when we married." Vivian smiled, feeling a contentment that went bone deep. Sometimes the best things in life aren't planned. They agreed to wait before telling Charlotte, wanting to be sensitive to the complex emotions the news might evoke. But fate intervened when Charlotte overheard them discussing the baby with Emma. The girl disappeared for hours afterward, causing panic until Wade found her at the small cemetery on the edge of town, sitting beside her mother's grave. He approached cautiously, allowing Charlotte to acknowledge him first. "She's having a baby," Charlotte said flatly, not looking up from the simple wooden cross that marked Catherine's resting place. Wade sat beside his daughter. "Yes, she is. Will you love it more because it's hers and yours together?" The question broke Wade's heart. "Charlotte, look at me." He waited until she reluctantly met his gaze. "I could never love any child more than I love you and Emma. You are parts of my heart walking around outside my body." Charlotte's lower lip trembled. "But this baby will have both of you from the beginning. It won't remember a different mother." Wade chose his next words carefully. "That's true. This baby's story will be different from yours, but that doesn't make your story less important or your place in my heart any smaller." Charlotte picked at the grass near the grave marker. "Do you think Mama would be angry?" "About Vivian and the baby?" "No," Wade said firmly. "Your Mama loved you more than anything in this world. She would want you to be happy and cared for. Vivian does that not by replacing your Mama, but by honoring her memory through loving you girls." Charlotte was quiet for a long time. Finally, she said, "Emma called her mother today. I heard her." "Does that bother you?" "I don't know. Maybe." She sighed with the weight of emotions too complex for her young age. "I still remember Mama's voice. I don't want to forget." Wade put his arm around her shoulders. "You won't forget." And you don't have to call Vivian mother if you're not ready. She understands that. The ride home was silent, but that evening, Charlotte sought out Vivian, who was mending one of Wade's shirts by the fire. "I want to feel it," Charlotte announced without preamble. "The baby. When it starts kicking." Vivian set aside her sewing. "Of course. It might be a few more weeks before the movements are strong enough to feel from the outside, but you'll be the first to know when they are." Charlotte nodded, then hesitated before adding, "And I'd like to help with the baby when it comes. I'm old enough to be useful." "I'll need all the help I can get," Vivian agreed, recognizing the olive branch for what it was. "Especially from someone as capable as you." A hint of a smile touched Charlotte's lips. "Emma's going to spoil it rotten, probably," Vivian conceded. "We'll have to be the sensible ones, you and I." The pregnancy progressed without complications, much to everyone's relief. Dr. Miller confirmed Vivian's condition and pronounced her in excellent health, though he advised caution given her age. The baby was due in early January, and as Vivian's body changed to accommodate the growing life within, the family adjusted their routines accordingly. Wade insisted on hiring additional help for the ranch and the household, allowing Vivian to rest more as her pregnancy advanced. He found unexpected joy in watching her body transform, his love for her deepening with each passing day. As autumn painted the landscape in rich hues of gold and crimson, the Pattersons celebrated their first anniversary. Wade presented Vivian with a locket containing miniature drawings of Charlotte and Emma, done by a traveling artist who had passed through town. "To keep them close to your heart," he explained as he fastened it around her neck. "And soon we'll add another portrait." Vivian's gift to Wade was more practical, a fine new saddle she had secretly commissioned from the town's leatherworker, saving money from the egg and butter sales she managed. The town's attitude toward their marriage had shifted over the months. What had once been considered an odd match, the aging spinster schoolteacher, and the widowed rancher, was now seen as a success story. Vivian's pregnancy had seemingly legitimized their union in the eyes of even the most critical townspeople. Mrs. Godfrey, once Vivian's harshest judge, now made a point of inquiring after her health whenever they met and had organized the Ladies' Aid Society to prepare a layette for the coming baby. "Times are changing," Mrs. Holloway observed to Vivian during one of the sewing bees. "Women our age aren't expected to simply fade away anymore. We can still have adventures, still find love." Vivian smiled, her hand resting on her rounded abdomen. "I never expected this particular adventure." "The best ones are always unexpected," Mrs. Holloway replied with a knowing wink. Winter arrived early that year, with the first heavy snow falling before Thanksgiving. Wade fretted about Vivian's comfort and the accessibility of Dr. Miller should the baby come during a storm. He prepared the ranch meticulously, stockpiling supplies and reinforcing the barn and corrals against the harsh weather. Christmas was a joyous affair, with the house filled with the scents of pine boughs and Emma's increasingly accomplished baking. Charlotte had crafted a small wooden cradle with Wade's help, presenting it to Vivian with shy pride. "It's beautiful," Vivian exclaimed, running her fingers over the smooth wood. "The baby will sleep so peacefully in this." Charlotte ducked her head at the praise, but her pleasure was evident. "Pa did most of the work." "That's not true," Wade countered. "Charlotte designed it and did all the sanding and finishing. I just helped with the cutting." The new year arrived with a howling blizzard that kept them housebound for 3 days. It was during this storm, as the wind rattled the windows and the fire crackled in the hearth, that Vivian felt the first pangs of labor. She had been helping Emma with a quilting project, demonstrating how to create even stitches, when a sharp pain gripped her lower back. She inhaled sharply, causing both girls to look up in alarm. "Mother," Emma questioned, using the title that had become natural to her over the months. "It's nothing to worry about," Vivian assured them, though another spasm quickly contradicted her words. "Perhaps you could fetch your father from his study." Wade's reaction was immediate and decisive. He helped Vivian to their bedroom, sent Charlotte to prepare hot water and clean linens, and tasked Emma with keeping the fire well stoked. "Should I try to reach Dr. Miller?" he asked, his voice steady despite the concern in his eyes. Vivian shook her head. "The storm's too severe, he'd never make it through the drifts." She gripped his hand as another contraction seized her. "Women have been having babies without doctors for centuries. We'll manage." The labor progressed steadily through the night. Wade remained by Vivian's side, wiping her brow and offering words of encouragement. Charlotte surprised everyone with her practical efficiency, following Vivian's instructions with calm competence. Emma shuttled between the bedroom and kitchen, bringing fresh water and keeping the household functioning, as dawn broke. Painting the snow-covered landscape in shades of pink and gold, Vivian's labor intensified. The pain was unlike anything she had experienced, yet there was purpose in it, the ancient primal work of bringing new life into the world. "It's time," she gasped, gripping Wade's hand so tightly that her knuckles whitened. "The baby's coming now." Wade had helped birth countless calves and foals over the years, but this was entirely different. This was Vivian, his wife, his heart, and their child. "Tell me what to do," he said, his voice remarkably steady. With Vivian's guidance and Charlotte's assistance, Wade prepared to receive their child. The room filled with tension and anticipation as Vivian gathered her strength for the final stage of labor. "I can see the head," Wade announced, his voice thick with emotion. "One more push, Vivian." Just one more. With a cry that seemed to come from the depths of her soul, Vivian bore down, and the baby slipped into Wade's waiting hands, tiny, slick, and perfect. "A boy," Wade whispered as the infant's lusty wail filled the room. "We have a son." Tears streamed down Vivian's face as Wade placed the swaddled newborn in her arms. She gazed down at the tiny face, overwhelmed by a love so fierce it took her breath away. "Hello, little one," she murmured. "We've been waiting for you." Charlotte and Emma crowded close, their faces alight with wonder. "He's so small," Emma marveled, reaching out to touch the baby's cheek with a gentle finger. "What's his name?" Charlotte asked, her earlier reservations seemingly forgotten in the miracle of the moment. Wade and Vivian exchanged a look. They had discussed names but had made no final decision. "James," Wade said suddenly, "after your first husband, if that's all right with you." Vivian's heart swelled with gratitude for this man who understood that her past was part of who she was, not something to be erased or denied. "James Wade Patterson," she agreed, "a strong name for a new beginning." As the winter storm continued outside, the Patterson family gathered around the newest member. Their differences and past pains temporarily set aside in the shared joy of his arrival. That night, after the girls had finally been persuaded to go to bed and baby James slept peacefully in his cradle, Wade sat beside Vivian on their bed, his arm around her shoulders. "You were magnificent today," he said, pressing a kiss to her temple. "I've never seen anything so powerful or beautiful in my life." Vivian leaned against him, exhausted but content. "It was all of us together. You, me, the girls. We're a family, Wade, a real family. "We are," he agreed, "though not quite the family either of us imagined when we were younger." Vivian smiled, thinking of the path that had led her here, the losses and disappointments, the years of loneliness, the unexpected second chance at love and motherhood when she had believed that time had passed. "No," she said softly, "it's better." Outside, the storm began to abate, the howling wind giving way to a gentle snowfall that blanketed the world in pristine white, a clean slate, a fresh beginning, a promise of possibilities still to come. The woman who had once been considered too old to be chosen had found not just a husband but a family, a home, and a future filled with the love she had long stopped hoping for. And in the quiet of that winter night, with her newborn son sleeping nearby and her husband's arms around her, Vivian Ellis Patterson knew that some journeys, no matter how delayed or diverted, led exactly where they were meant to.